Hello everybody, thank you for being here tonight. We are on our week number 10 of our In.Form transformation journey. Tonight we get to talk about glandular health and hormones and have a better understanding of how that works within our bodies and what kind of responses we get with different hormones, and how our thyroid and our adrenal glands are all kind of intertwined into our health overall. We're also going to talk about plateaus and how they can definitely be a part of the program. Anytime you are working to lose weight in particularly, we can see plateaus happening and why they happen in the sense of relation to hormones and in the sense of relationship to just how the body works as itself. So those are some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight. Last week, of course, we talked about dealing with stress and kind of rode off of the week before from the emotional world of eating, which those two particular modules are very closely knitted together. Just understanding how stress can really affect the cortisol, which we'll be talking about more tonight, that gets released from the adrenal glands just when we are in a stressful situation, and how that's affected as well, and how our eating will be affected also. Sometimes people eat because they're stressed, and some people don't eat because they're stressed, and then we have people who eat at different levels depending on that type of stress that's going on. So hopefully everybody's had a chance this week to kind of go back and look and see, how their bodies react to stress and what kind of reactions you typically have and what kind of things you could do. Something else that we had talked about was creating a bedtime routine. Did anybody get a chance to work on creating a bedtime routine or take a look at that? You did a little bit?
Well, I have a lullaby that tells me.
Yeah, great. That's a wonderful step in the right direction. Get a lullaby going. No, not you ladies yet? Okay. No,
I was trying to get in bed earlier.
Well, that's good.
That did help me some. I noticed the next day.
Yeah. I actually did too. I actually took a couple days and went to bed earlier than I normally do. I'm kind of a late night owl, and I actually got up earlier the next morning and I got more things done than I normally do, and I'm like, oh well, this is kind of cool. But I didn't feel as stressed during the day because I didn't have so many things to do in a shorter time period. I felt like I had a little time. I could sit down and take my little break in the afternoon and things like that. So, well, good. Well, that sometimes just getting to bed a little bit earlier, even if you haven't created a whole routine, that in itself will help us a ton. So, all right. Last week on the Monday night class also, I did not get you guys your handouts on NutriCalm. I usually like to talk about NutriCalm along with cortisol, and I didn't get a chance to do that. So I'll give you guys your handouts on that. Did you guys by any chance, were you able to pick up your samples of NutriCalm last week? Yes, did you pick up one? You probably didn't get one.
She was gone, I think.
I can't remember. Does that look familiar? Anyways, I was giving out samples of the NutriCalm because the NutriCalm is a really important formula. Huh? No? Okay. The NutriCalm is a really important formula. It's got a lot of B vitamins, a lot of C vitamins in. It's a really good supplement to take on a daily basis, especially if you do experience higher levels of stress due to job, children, whatever's going on in your life. It just kind of helps even things out. When we get stressed, we actually lose a lot of B vitamins. They're dumped into our system, and C vitamins, which are also water soluble. So the NutriCalm helps replace that. And the other thing I like about it is they actually use some really good herbs such as passion flower and valerian root, hops, also in this particular combination to really help with calming the nervous system. When I had the store, NutriCalm was probably one of my top 5 sellers in the store. I sold it a lot, especially to women who are premenopause and menopausal. It just seemed to be something that really kind of helped take the edge off of that shift that they were going through at that time in their lives. So something to think about. And I don't think I gave you guys the information on cortisol either last week, right? I think I just completely forgot handouts Monday night all the way around. So there's the information on cortisol, which of course we talked about last week, which is really important for those people who have a lot of stress going on and get the stress reactions such as craving sugary foods or craving high-fat foods. Anything like that may happen when those cortisol levels go up. You can also feel like not hungry as well when those cortisols go up. But when the cortisols go up, it also increases your insulin, which is one of the reasons why some people who have even blood sugar imbalances even when they don't eat is just because the cortisol and the insulin response that's taking place and how those are connected. Real quickly, next week, we will not be having class next week, which is the week of the holiday. So we will resume on the 26th and 27th. On the 26th and 27th, which is the last Monday and Tuesday of this month, we're going to be going over module number 11. And with Shiree, she's got some really interesting information she wants to bring forward to us on exercise. So we're going to go ahead and put that in together with number 11. And then the week after that will be our 13th and final week, but we're going to do 12 and 13 together because both of those modules are really short. So just so you guys kind of have an idea of how this is going to play out over the next 3 weeks as we wrap up our In.Form transformation journey that we're on. The other thing to mention is we will be doing measurements the next time we get together for those of you who are on the regular schedule. You guys are a week behind, aren't you? Yeah, you guys are a week behind, so we'll be doing yours the very first week in December, where everybody else who's started doing their measurements off when we first started doing the class, they'll be doing those on the 26th and 27th, okay? All right, so let's get to week number 10, glandular health and hormones. I'd like to go ahead and start off with one of my favorite quotes from Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor is it the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is adaptable to change. And I think this is very important because by the time we get to week 10, we've all had a lot of changes been going on. We've made some changes with whether it's with our eating, with our sleeping, with our drinking, whatever it may be. And just remembering that being able to make changes for the better is very important as we move forward. And with Charles Darwin himself saying this, I think that gives a lot of credit to what's actually being said, especially with his belief pattern that he had professed. But it's the species that's adaptable to change. So I'd like to take a couple minutes here real quick and ask you guys over the last 10 weeks what kind of changes you've been able to make. Regina, you got one for us?
Excuse me. That cough still with me. With the eating, I've been able to do more healthier stuff.
Okay.
I did crash and eat some sweets. But my A1C went down from 11 to 7.6.
Yes, that's right. You told me that.
Yes.
That's fabulous. Your A1C went down from 11 to 7.6 since you started the program.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
And he did say, "Oh, you lost 8 pounds." He said, "Whatever you're doing, keep it up. That's okay."
Wonderful. Well, you got some support from the medical standpoint. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Well, that obviously means you've made some really good changes because you're
Yes.
already seeing results,
So
and that's fabulous.
Did you replace your diabetic medicine with the berberine, or are you still doing both? Or?
I stopped the medicine when I started the class.
Really? Good
Uh-huh.
for you.
Yep.
Wow.
It was a shot
Yes.
of Trulicity and
Yeah.
gluca. Can't even think of that. I can't even think of it right now. But
Okay.
it's I did take it that first week with,
Yeah.
and then after then I didn't bother with it.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a need for it.
You haven't had a need for the medication at all.
Nope.
That's fabulous. That's wonderful.
I didn't think of it.
Wonderful. Shermetta, any kind of changes that you feel like you've made in the last 10 weeks? What changes have you made?
I've changed quite a bit.
Changed quite a bit.
When I was, well, like I told you, when I started losing weight, it was mostly like the protein,
Right?
but I kind of had gotten off of it,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of not. But I've done a lot better since I've been on the program.
Been a lot better. Yeah.
Exercising more.
Yeah. That's a
Trying to
great
get
change.
in, and more water. That's the biggest. I was a water drinker already,
Yes.
but I'm really drinking more water now
Yeah.
than I used to drink.
Yeah. So getting the water in is a huge change. I think I said at the very first, didn't I say at the very first In.Form class that I taught, that if you don't do anything at all with this program, if you just drink more water, I believe I said that the very first time. Now, I mean, I still feel that way, but I'm hoping we do more than just drink more water. But that is a really huge change, just to drink more water on a regular
Yes, I
basis and
really
get used to
thought-
that.
Yeah, I thought I was a water drinker, but I learned
Mm-hmm.
that I was not in this class, that I was not getting enough. And
Yeah,
I thought I was really drinking water, but
yeah.
I learned that.
Your
I wasn't.
awareness increased?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Ethan, what kind of changes have you made?
More exercise.
More exercise? Wonderful. I think you said something about when you let me go outside.
He said she won't let him go
Or she
outside to run.
Well, that's good, I guess. Nettie, what do you think has been one of the biggest changes you've made over the last few months being on the program?
Well, I agree with her. I thought I was a water drinker.
Yeah.
Until I realized I wasn't drinking enough. Just your awareness to, the bad things and getting rid of those. Those
Mhm.
were, I don't know, I've just made so many changes. I've been doing this so long, I don't remember.
Right. Made so many changes,
But
I don't even remember the old days anymore, right?
Well, and I should look like a model, but.
And I'm gonna tell you what really, the sugar
Mhm.
module,
Yeah,
because I thought I was doing something with the no sugars,
yeah,
getting those, I was buying the stuff with the, no sugars and
Mhm. the artificial sweeteners
I
and,
was really blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been eating this stuff.
yeah,
That's what I was buying, stuff that
Yeah.
says no sugar
Right.
added or
Mhm.
sugar free.
yeah,
I was, and then until that module, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah.
eating the wrong stuff,
yeah.
thinking. that
Wonderful.
Because it didn't have sugar in it, but it was bad.
It's still bad, worse
Yeah.
than sugar in of itself, right?
So I
Bigger
have not
demon
bought
behind the
any more
curtain.
since.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it sounds like we're all adaptable to change, which is fantastic, which means that's something that will continue on even when you're not here in this class anymore, when we're not doing our regular weekly classes. That is something you can still continue to do, is still continue to realize changes can continually be made. There's always more information, there's always more things to twist and tweak and, do a little differently than you've done before. So just making sure that we understand that changing is really important for us to get where we want to go. In fact, I have another little saying that goes with this. Does anybody know what the definition of insanity is? Anybody? You probably know.
I can't remember. That's me.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That is truly insanity. Because that's not being adaptable to change. That's not looking at a different way of doing a thing. That's not being able to assess the situation and say, you know what? I think if I've tried this 2 or 3 times and I'm not getting a different result, then maybe I need to look at something different. It's really is being stubborn and or insane, or a combination of the two somehow, some way. But I like to bring this quote out at this time because we really do need to be open to finding new ways to be healthier. I mean, the food industry is constantly bombarding us with this new thing and this new health food and this new miracle herb and this new miracle drug and this new constantly. And so we've got to be able to be on our P's and our Q's with understanding what information really is being put forward and what the purpose behind that information is, and be willing to make a change if we realize, that all the sugar-free stuff that we were doing is really worse for us than having the things with the sugar like you did, Shermetta. That's wonderful. It's a great testimony. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our manual, or actually no, one more thing first. So I also like to bring forth at this time too, just a reminder, we did this, I believe, in week number 2, just understanding if you are here to lose weight, understanding the IN.Form formula for losing weight is really important because this will continue forward after our 13 weeks. If you really want to lose weight, which of course we want to make sure we're losing body fat, we're not losing muscle mass, we're not losing water or hydration, you need to continue to keep your H2O up. You need to continue to drink plenty of water. That needs to go up. You need to continue to increase your muscle mass. As you increase your muscle mass with eating more protein, making sure you can digest that protein, because that's a big thing. Remember week 4 we talked about that. If you can't break down your protein and absorb the protein, it's still not going to do you any good. So make sure that you're breaking down and able to actually absorb that protein. When you do those two things, your body fat is going to go down, and eventually what's going to happen is your weight's going to go down. Now temporarily your weight may go up when you gain muscle mass, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. But we're going to talk about why that happens a little bit more later on tonight. But increasing your water to bring down your body fat and increasing your muscle mass with exercise and protein is really super, super important if you want to get to a weight that's in the range of your expectations. Remembering that muscle mass weighs more than fat also, but that body fat is something we want to be looking at. Making sure that that number is coming down. So don't be as concentrated on the weight in the beginning, but making sure that all of these factors are being played together. Any questions on that, you guys? Okay. We are ready to roll into week number 10. We're going to go to page number 77 of your IN.Form journal, or participant manual rather. Glandular health and hormones. So sometimes we'll hit a plateau. And when we hit a plateau, this may be a sign that our hormones need some attention. In this module, we're going to help you understand your hormones and how they influence your metabolism. We're also going to learn about your basal metabolic rate, your BMR, and how this is really important in understanding how your body functions on a daily basis. So page number 78 talks about, those plateaus. While there can be various reasons for your plateau, know that everybody goes through them. Plateaus can often be traced back to hormones that influence your metabolism. So it's important for us to learn about the glands that regulate our hormones. And that's something we're going to do tonight by talking about the adrenal glands and the thyroid glands specifically. But before we get into that, I want to talk about one other reason for plateaus. So sometimes it's hormones, but sometimes it's just our body getting comfortable with its new weight. Our body gets comfortable functioning at a certain weight and sometimes gets a little stubborn at losing more weight because it's really comfortable. It knows how to work at that 150 pounds. It knows how to, regulate the respiratory system and the cardiovascular system and all the other functions that your body does. So when you've been on any kind of a weight loss program or a healthy program and you notice that you've hit a plateau, even though you're still doing everything right, you're drinking the water, you're getting the exercise, you're getting your protein in the morning, you're eating 2 and 3 times every 2-3 hours, you're doing everything right, but your weight stays the same. And it can get frustrating because then you think, oh wow, well maybe I need to change something, maybe I'm not doing something right. When in actuality, your body is just kind of hanging in there to kind of see what you're going to do and kind of get a feel for if it really is ready to make a change in lowering more weight. Especially when we're looking at that last 10 pounds or that last 15 pounds, that can be some of the most challenging weight to get off. Especially if it's realistic, of course we're keeping that in mind. We need to make sure we have realistic goals about our weight as well. But the thing is, the body has to get comfortable moving itself down to a new weight and then performing all these body functions that it normally does. So you can have a lot of muscle mass, or you can have a lot of body fat, and you can still weigh the same thing. When I first started Jenny Craig back in the day, I was at 180 pounds, and I literally was chubby fat. And so I lost a lot of weight. I actually got really sick when I got down to my goal weight because my body just didn't like that. It didn't like that being at that weight. It wasn't enough energy for my body to function properly. So after going through that experience and then still getting into eating healthy and became a vegetarian, trying to kind of figure out how to improve my health, and of course soon after that I started doing a lot of weight training and started doing basically amateur bodybuilding. I got back up to 180 pounds, but my waist was like this and my muscles were like this, but I was still at that same 180 pounds. So the whole point is You know, sometimes we need to be real careful about looking at our weight and understand our body's constitution just needs to switch and change. And then what will happen once we continue drinking the water, getting our protein in, eating every 2 to 3 hours, doing all the things that we're supposed to do, as the body sees that this is something you're going to continue to do, it's not going to have to slide back up and gain a bunch more weight that you just took off, right? Then it'll start dropping a couple more pounds, another 5, and it'll happen fast too. That's what's really wild about it. You may lose 5 pounds in 2 weeks. You may go 6-8 weeks without losing a pound, then all of a sudden in a couple of weeks you can lose 5 pounds because you stayed consistent. So I like to bring that up at this point as well, because sometimes we can get frustrated for the wrong reasons. But realizing we're doing the right thing. It's just the body getting used to moving to that lower weight, getting used to functioning at that lower weight, and knowing it's going to stay there. Anytime we have quick weight loss out the door, it's usually weight loss that 99.9% of the time is going to come back. But this kind of weight loss is more permanent. It's when the body decides, hey, guess what? We're ready to move down. We're ready to be at a lower weight and function at a lower weight and do it effectively and from a healthy standpoint. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind if you ever feel like you're on a plateau. All right, page number 79. Let's talk about the BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. Your basal metabolic rate is the amount of energy measured in calories that your body uses to function at rest. Your body is continually doing a lot of different functions, such as regulating body temperature, breathing, circulating blood, cell growth, brain and nerve function, and contraction of muscles. The body is constantly utilizing energy and or calories for functions. Constantly. In fact, your BMR accounts for 60 to 75% of the calories you'll burn in just one day. So that means only 25 to 40% of the calories you burn in one day are on the things that you do. Going to work, going to exercise, walking across the parking lot to the grocery store. I mean, that only accounts for less than half of the calories you burn in one day. So you can see how important it is that we have an awareness of our basal metabolic rate and how that affects our bodies. It has a major impact on whether you're going to maintain, lose, or gain weight. So let's talk about that basal metabolic rate and all the factors that influence it. First of all is body size. If you're large bone versus small bone, if you have a tendency to carry more muscle mass or you don't carry as much muscle mass, you're going to burn different levels of calories. Like for instance, when you have muscle mass takes more calories to sustain it. So when you have more muscle mass, you need more calories. If you guys have noticed when you've looked on your BioTracker assessments over the last few weeks, you've noticed your muscle mass goes up. Then you'll notice your DCI, your daily caloric intake, also goes up because your body needs more calories to function at rest because of your increased muscle mass. And it allows us to actually eat more, which is a great thing. It also puts us in a great position for losing the body fat as our body gets comfortable doing so. Muscle mass burns more calories than fat does. Fat just hangs out. They don't do anything. Muscles contract, use oxygen. We need those muscles. Those muscles do lots of work for us. When I was training for my really big event, for the activity I used to be involved in, I took about 8 weeks to I totally decreased my carbs, except carb loading a couple times a week for energy, lots of protein, lots of fat, lots of vegetables, and I got down really lean. And I worked really hard. I was in the gym 2.5 hours, 5 days a week, sometimes on the weekends as well, depending on my schedule. And I got where I needed to be at by the time the event came on. Well, as soon as the event was over, I was like, you know what? I am not going to go back into that gym for at least a week. I'm done. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to eat whatever I want for a week. Because I had worked really, really hard. And I was like, you know what? I deserve it. I might as well. I told myself no a lot the last 8 weeks, so I'm going to tell myself yes this week. Well, what I found was really interesting is I took a whole week off from going to the gym, which was a big deal for me. And I went back in the next week, and I went into weigh, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so scared. And what was funny is nothing changed. Nothing changed. I didn't gain any weight. I didn't lose any weight. And I was still as strong as I was before. But my whole point was is I built my muscles up to such a strong degree that those muscles continue to burn. Those extra calories I was eating, my muscles were burning it and utilizing it. That's why it's so cool when you really get this program down. And Nettie's husband Terry has experienced this with their vacations. When you get this program down and you really get it locked in, you can go on vacation. You can have, holiday events. You can have family events. You can have things that you go out and do where you don't have to tell yourself no, where you get out of your routine for a week, and you'll lose a very little progress. I mean, the progress is not in a big jeopardy form. You actually maintain, for the most part, where you're at. And if you have lost a little bit of progress, it doesn't take much to jump right back in and get it back because your body's used to that. So understanding that by implementing what we're doing here with IN.Form, especially during this 13 weeks, it's going to help carry you through the rest of your life, especially if you follow it, continue to follow it to a degree, like the proteins, getting the proteins in and exercising and water, all the basics, all the foundational stuff. As long as you continue those kinds of things, then it's going to be that way for you for the rest of your life. You'll be able to enjoy events and not be stressed out because you've lost all this time and progress because you built the muscle mass up. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Fat versus muscle. We just basically covered that. Muscle tissue burns more calories at rest than fat tissue. Gender. Women tend to average 5 to 10% lower than BMR. Women just don't have as high of a BMR as men do. And one of the reasons of that is because women are the baby carriers. Women are the ones that have got to carry the baby for 9 to 10 months. And so therefore, the way that women have been created, they've been created to be able to survive for that time period and be able to still take care of this fetus growing inside them, right? Where men, that doesn't happen. I mean, they're not involved in that whole process for the 9 to 10 months. So therefore, our bodies have been calculated as women to where if our bodies sense, especially if we're in childbearing years and we haven't hit menopause yet, our body senses a starvation or a famine coming on, it will hold on to as many calories as it can, and it will basically just batten down the hatches, and we're burning only the calories we got to burn because we don't know what's happening here. Does that make sense? So that's one of the reasons why it's so easy for men on this program to lose the weight, to gain the muscle mass, to get a little bit further, a little bit quicker than the women. It's just because they're made differently. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just having that awareness and understanding that is really important because our bodies as women were made to continue survival of the species, so to say. And so therefore, we've got to have the energy and the calories to do that for a length of time period. Age. BMR decreases by roughly 0 to 3% every year after age 30. And of course, this can be avoided with strength training. And I don't mean you have to go, pump a bunch of iron, but just basic strength training. Whether you're using ropes, a ball, just simply going up and down stairs, just challenging your muscles more. If you're on a treadmill, increasing the incline on the treadmill so that way you get more challenge to the leg muscles. That increases, that will help with strength training. So that's really important to continue to challenge your muscles, even if it's light weights, like tiny weights, like 5-pound weights. Temperature, both external and internal, will affect your BMR. If your body has to warm up or cool down, it's going to take calories to do that. It's going to take energy to do that. Hormonal levels. Even if you struggle with weight issues, it's always a good idea to check your thyroid, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Hormonal levels going up and down can definitely affect our BMR and how many calories we're burning. Women there again, because of the life expectancies that we go through, the things that happen with us as women, being women, our hormones shift every month. And when our hormones shift every month, we're going to be burning different levels of calories throughout the month just because of that. That's normal. General health. fever, illness, surgery, injury, anything where your body has to do extra work to repair or rebuild, is going to need more calories to do so. So your BMR is going to be affected if you've been sick, if you've had an injury, and we've seen this. We've seen this with people who haven't felt well for a week, and they may have been doing the same amount of protein that they were doing before, but yet their body needed more protein to heal from the injury or the sickness or whatever it was, and so therefore their muscle mass may have went down or didn't gain because of it. So those are the things that affect our basal metabolic rate, and it's really important for us to have a really good understanding of that. Any questions? All right, page number 80, the energy behind eating. Your body burns calories just by digesting food. In fact, most all the energy that your body burns is by digesting food. It takes a lot of energy to burn or to digest foods. And so a lot of calories are going towards that. Just think about it. Have you guys ever heard about the celery stick and calorie analogy? By the time you eat a piece of celery stick, and by the time you eat it and digest it, you've burned all the calories of that celery stick that you just put in. So it's like negligible on the calorie count. You don't even have to count it for calories. Because it literally we literally burn calories just digesting food. Meats and proteins are going to take more energy to digest. And that's a good thing for the most part, as long as you're digesting your protein properly. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get at the bottom of the page. But I also want to bring up something called food combining. Has anybody here heard of food combining before? Food combining I've used for many years, especially with people who have digestional issues, whether they have very loose eliminations or they have a lot of constipation going on. We have to realize that different foods have different digestional timings at accessing the nutrients in those foods. So like for instance, a banana will digest in 20 minutes. Okay, you'll get all the nutrients and everything out of that banana in 20 minutes. But like a piece of steak will take 12 hours. So if you combine a piece of steak with a banana at the same time, you're going to lose some nutrients somewhere in the mix there. Because somebody's going to get slowed down or somebody's going to get speeded up. And most likely the protein's going to win out. Which means that the banana, you're going to lose the nutrients from the banana because it's not going to digest in the time it needs to digest to access those vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients from it that you're looking for from that banana. That banana will actually start to ferment in your gut because that steak will slow it down. It won't move through as fast as it's supposed to move through. Make sense? One of the worst things that we do in America is our common food, which is a hamburger and french fries, or steak and potato. Meat and potatoes do not digest at the same kind of complementary timing. So when you eat those two things together, you actually lose vital nutrients and you can have digestional upsets because that food is not compatible in digestional timing with it. So it's something I like to always bring up at this point in time. Like for instance, the only thing you eat with meat is vegetables. And then breads and vegetables can go together, but you never want to put breads or carbohydrates with meats because the digestional timing is completely different. I've had people simply lose weight just by food combining correctly, by eating complementary foods together at the same time, opposed to mixing ones that are not complementary to each other. So
it's meat and vegetables.
Meat and vegetables together, yes. Vegetables and carbohydrates together. Fruits you really don't want to mix with anything. All fruits kind of have their own little thing going on, whether they're an acid or a subacid. Although I will occasionally do fruit with like cottage cheese or with yogurt because those are already fermented. And so therefore they're already partially digested, I guess is the best way to put that. Anything that's fermented already has got some activity going on with digestion. Make sense?
Can you eat cottage cheese with the salad?
No.
No. I was
Well,
gonna try it.
you could, but it's not as optimal.
Okay.
It's not as bad as steak and potato. Let me put it that way. It would be better to do that than a steak and potato, but it's not the most compatible,
Okay.
okay? But it's not the least compatible either.
So we go to the Western Sizzling, you get a steak and you say low carb it,
Mhm.
that means you just get the salad bar.
Yeah.
Or you get the whole thing, you get a potato and a salad bar.
Mhm.
Yeah, don't get
Yeah.
all the,
Yep.
that's
And all
what
the
I do.
trimmings that go with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I always do, one or the other.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So the thing you have to remember is because our body burns a lot of calories digesting foods, we want to optimize this as much as possible. This is one of the other reasons, besides getting protein in first thing in the morning to help us with balancing our hormones, we're also wanting to get food in first thing in the morning is because that's when we actually start the fire of burning and metabolism. And I equate this out to a fireplace. So let's say, we got these cold days going on, you want to burn a fire in your fireplace all day long. You don't get up in the morning and just put a ton of wood in there and they have this little spark going and it just basically goes out, right? So you don't want to get up in the morning and just like, whoa, overfeed yourself, right? Because that's not going to be good for you. But what you need to do is like on the fire, you need to start your kindling, you need to start your fire, and then every couple hours you throw a couple more logs on. Another couple hours you throw a couple more logs on. That's what we need to do with our eating. We need to be eating every 2 to 3 hours to continually keep that fire of metabolism burning. We need to keep kindling on our gut, right? So that way we're burning more calories on a regular basis. Now when you sleep at night, you are burning a very minimal amount of calories. You're in a resting state of metabolism. And that doesn't get sparked until you actually eat in the morning. So if you're one of those people who gets up, doesn't like to eat anything in the morning, and then waits till 11 o'clock or noon to eat, you literally have lost several hours of potential of burning more calories because you did not eat. I always would laugh when people in the store would come in and they say, oh, well, I don't like to eat in the morning. If I eat in the morning, then I get hungrier sooner. And it's like, well, yeah, because you just started your metabolism. And your body's just asking you to continue fueling that metabolism in a proper way. But that's why that happens. So you need to be sure you are stimulating your metabolism first thing in the morning. The other thing you want to make sure you're not doing is putting cold water on your digestive system first thing in the morning. If you put cold water, especially ice cold water, ice cold anything in your stomach first thing in the morning, it actually is going to seize up your digestive system. It's not going to encourage you to have an elimination, that's for sure. And those little hairs get all cold and your body has to use some extra calories to warm it up, but it definitely doesn't use the calories it would use if you were to use warm water and kind of jumpstart that digestive system. It's one of the reasons why I like doing warm lemon water first thing in the morning. Kind of jumpstarts that metabolism, gets everything warmed up,
Is there ever a time when you can use cold water?
You can, most definitely, throughout the day, but not first thing in the morning. And there again, you got to look at your digestional system too and what's happening and making sure you're not drinking it with a meal, because that's definitely not good to drink cold water with a meal. Because there again, that slows down your digestion, right? We don't want to do that.
So I drink the Purify first thing in the morning. It's not ice cold, but it ain't warm either. I don't know if I could choke it down.
Well, as long as it's not ice cold.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're actually putting fiber in, so that's going to stimulate your metabolism right there.
Okay.
So that's good. That's a good thing. Your body's already going to, okay, I got to suck nutrients, I got to do this. You see what I'm saying? It's not just like plain water.
Yeah, and then I wait 30 minutes.
That's perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect. So make sure that you're continuing to add kindling to the fire of your metabolism by eating every 2 to 3 hours and making sure you're getting something in first thing in the morning. Just checking my notes, make sure I didn't forget anything. All right, so let's go at the bottom of page number 80. Let's look at the different types of foods and what they do to our metabolism. Let's first start with a very small lime green line at the very bottom. This is lipids, also known as fats. And lipids, aka fats, will increase your metabolism by a slight bit. But the thing about lipids or fats, what they do is they sustain the burning of that metabolism. So you can see here at about an hour and a half after putting in some type of fat, such as an avocado, you're peaking out your calorie burning, and it's staying there almost all the way through 4 hours. Fats are wonderful at curbing your appetite and helping you with satiety. I often use avocados when I'm cooking dinner and I'm really hungry and I don't want to be picking at food and I want to make sure I put something in good or to get through making the food. And I'll eat half an avocado because that'll help me get me through to the meal. It'll help hold my satiety until I get there. The other thing that's really cool about fats, such as avocados, is it slows the release of sugars in your body. So if you eat fats along with a carbohydrate, which releases sugars, that fat will slow the release of the sugar, just like a fiber will. So that's a really good food combining thing to do, where carbohydrates will spike your sugars and drop right back down. If you put fat with that, that'll kind of just sustain it out. That's where I always like to have my chocolate covered almonds. I get my chocolate, right? But I get the almond for the protein and the fat, and it helps balance out a little bit of sugar in the chocolate on the outside. But yeah, you know, I mean, if you're having a chocolate fix and you need something, that's a really good combination to have. Yes, Ethan.
You can have that?
After we're done. For 13 weeks. You know, it's a great snack to have. Like I said, if you are really feeling like you want something chocolate, it's a really good snack to have. Any kind of chocolate covered nuts is wonderful. The next thing I want to look at is carbohydrates. We just kind of spoke about that, but you can see here, carbohydrates is in the red. And you can see it, not even an hour into eating a carbohydrate does it spike. Your energy level spikes for burning that calorie, but then it starts to drop right back down. It doesn't sustain itself at all. This is one of the reasons why we can eat a carbohydrate and then an hour, hour and a half later we want more, usually in the form of some kind of sugar, and then an hour and a half later we want more, is because our sugars spike, we burn the calories, and it drops right back down. Just like when we talked about blood sugars and how the pancreas and the insulin works, right? So that's why eating carbohydrates by themselves is not generally a good idea. Now, of course, proteins, as you can see in the blue line, it spikes out between 2 and 3 hours. You start burning a significant amount of calories with protein as soon as you start eating them, and it spikes out about 2 hours and 20 minutes or so after you eat it, and then it gradually comes down, but it goes all the way past 4. This is one of the reasons why, especially for people who have any kind of blood sugar imbalances, that you should be having some kind of protein every 2 to 3 hours. Because not only does it keep your protein levels high enough to keep your metabolism rolling, but it also helps to keep your blood sugars down. And it helps you to not crave sugars also. Now, protein and fat can really be your best friends when it comes to balancing blood sugars and helping you with getting through from point A to point B on your meals or your snacks. So those are good things to have around. Okay, any questions on the energy behind eating? Everybody good? All right, let's move on to page number 81 then. So we're going to start talking about hormones, and it's really important that we have a very great understanding of what hormones are. Hormones are simply just messengers. That's all they are. They're messengers. They're messengers that take some particular message from point A to point B to point C, point D, whatever it is, to deliver a message to another gland to tell it what it needs to do. And this whole hormonal system that we have involves glands. And we have several different glands in our bodies. But we need to be able to have that pathway of those hormones, the highway, so to speak, of the hormones available and open for us to get the messages from point A to point B to point C. Okay? So when you understand that hormones are simply just messengers, it makes a lot of sense when we understand how the body works. One hormone sent out causes this to happen, causes that to happen, and you got the domino effect from there. But you got to have a good messaging system. the message is getting conflicted or derailed or intercepted, then we can have problems with our hormones, our glands, okay?
So hysterectomy messes all those messengers up.
Yes. It throws up. There's no longer a place for the messages to be received when it comes to that.
I'm screwed.
So your body, so your body has to find a different way of handling that.
So how do you,
For what specifically?
you see
Over hysterectomy?
hysterectomy?
Oh, well, that's a whole other side of the coin for us to follow somewhere else. We're going to keep it really simple tonight, but I can give you more information on that later. But the next thing I want you to understand is that our glands have these little receptor sites to receive the hormone, to receive the message, and it locks it in. So if you guys remember last week, we talked about ACTP, or ACTH rather, that was released from the pituitary gland. It went to the adrenal gland, and it locks into the message, goes to the receptor site, and it locks in the message so that the way the gland receives the message, it does what it needs to do from there. These receptor sites can be very much adulterated by hormones that are not of our own. This is one of the reasons why we need to be really careful about eating foods that are high in hormones, especially our meats, because those are hormones or chemicals that are made outside of our body, and they are called xenoestrogens. Xeno estrogens. Xenoestrogens are going to be estrogens not made in our own body. Estrogen being a male female hormone. Chicken, for instance, has a lot more hormones in it typically than what beef does. Reason being is because it takes a lot less time to get a baby chicken ready for slaughter to be on your table than it does for a calf to go to the steer and be ready for slaughter. A lot less time. So the hormones are induced in both animals, but the density is different because the size of the animal, and also because the time that it takes from it going from birth to your plate. In the 1950s, I believe the figure was, because of hormones that are injected into chickens, right now, compared to the 1950s, it takes half the time for a chicken to be ready to go on your plate than it did in the 1950s because of hormones. Hormones speed up the process of growth, the estrogen ones. So that's why we want to be very careful when we're purchasing meats, that there is no hormones in them whatsoever. This is one of the reasons why our little girls are also moving through their cycles a lot quicker, is because they are exposed to a lot of hormones in milks, cheeses, chicken, beef, and therefore they're getting these outside hormones in their own body. That estrogen, those xenoestrogens, is locking into the receptor sites, so it's not allowing their own hormones to do what they need to do, right? And it throws everything off kilter. And then we have PMS. Then we have menopause, which some would say are diseases, which are not. They're just simply a reaction from an exposure of hormones that are too great from an external environment. Make sense? So we need to be really careful with that. If that is one thing I would say all women need to make sure they stay away from, it's like hormonally fed meats and dairy. That's huge. Huge when you think of the overall picture. Yeah.
What is soybean?
Soy? Soy, if depending on the type of soy that it is, because soy can be GMO'd, which is not good at all. But even if you get a clean soy, it can be an estrogen precursor. But it's not really so bad as long as it's a clean soy. But the problem is soy is not clean at all for the most part in our country, because the top 3 GMOs in our country is soy, corn, and cotton. You know, so if it's a good clean source of soy, it could be good. But that is if somebody is not overly estrogen dominant. If somebody's very estrogen dominant, soy is not going to be good for them. And that means they're estrogen dominant maybe because they're getting excess of these xenoestrogens from an outside source. Okay, Ethan?
What about soy sauce?
Soy sauce? Same thing. You want to do tamari and stay away from soy unless it's organic. Because tamari is a fermented type of soy that's healthier. It's also anti-cancer. Also. All right, so now that we have an idea of how hormones work and what's happening, let's talk about the glands. We've got the pineal gland in the brain. We've got the pituitary gland in the brain. We've got the thyroid in the neck. We've got the parathyroid, which sits on top of it, which is a controller of our calcium balance in our body. We've got our thymus right here, which is a controller of our immune system. We've got our pancreas, which we learned in week 4. Not only it helps to regulate insulin, but also helps us with stage 2 of protein digestion. We've got the ovaries. We've got the testes. We've got the uterus. We've got the prostate. All of these organs are glands, and they are all continuously exchanging hormones, exchanging information for the body to run properly. Oh, adrenal glands, forgot those. And the other thing to remember, if anybody has any kind of a cyst or a tumor, a growth, an abnormal growth, most of the time that is estrogen dominance. Estrogen is the growth hormone. So excessive estrogen will cause tumors and cysts to grow, especially when they're from a chemical outside exposure. But most all your cysts and tumors are from excess estrogen, no matter where they're at in the body. No matter where they're at in the body. All right, so let's talk about the thyroid. The thyroid sits right here in our neck. The hormones it releases are responsible for controlling your metabolism and many of your body's vital functions. Iodine foods specifically are one of the main foods for the iodine, or for the, back up. Iodine is one of the main foods for the thyroid. Iodine is a mineral, and I don't mean a chemical iodine, I mean a natural iodine that we'll see a lot in like our sea vegetables. And that iodine is the main source that gets that thyroid running. It's the food for the thyroid. When you eat iodine, it'll help you create 2 hormones, your T3 and your T4. When your thyroid doesn't make enough of these hormones, your metabolism starts to slow down. We need to make enough of these hormones, but we've got to make them from a proper source, from iodine. Selenium is a secondary nutrient to the thyroid. So it also helps to feed the thyroid as well. And selenium is another micronutrient is what we would call it. It's another mineral. We only need it in small amounts, but it does help us with thyroid function as well. That's one of the reasons why I like Brazil nuts so much, because Brazil nuts are not only high in magnesium, but they're also, which is great for women, but it's also high in selenium as well. These nutrients have to be consumed. Your body doesn't make these. So you need to consume the proper amounts of iodine and selenium to help feed that thyroid. So the thing about the thyroid is that your thyroid can literally be 30% under functioning, but it's not going to be showing up on a blood test. You can go to the doctor, you can get a blood test, and because of their wide ranges for potential disease, your thyroid could be 30% under functioning, but it doesn't show up on a blood test because you're not in the disease state yet. That's why when I look at blood tests, I look at them from a whole different standpoint. I look at them as the potential for disease before you actually get there. But you can go to a doctor thinking you have problems with your thyroid, they test your thyroid, and they say, oh no, it's in the normal ranges. But their normal ranges are not for potential of that disease. So think about it. You're running around, your thyroid's 30% under functioning. How many calories are you not burning because your thyroid's 30% under functioning? A lot, right? 30% of the calories you would burn with that thyroid typically, you're not burning because of that underfunction. So I want to give you another way to test your own thyroid to see if it's potentially either under running or over running. And what you'll need to do is you need to get an oral thermometer, piece of paper and a pen, and set it on your nightstand by your bed. And first thing every morning, what you need to do, making faces at me, I had to make one back. First thing you need to do every morning, before you get out of bed, do not get up and go urinate or use the bathroom or check on the dog. You need to stay in bed. You want the temperature that you're at while you're at complete rest. And find out what your temperature is for 5 to 7 days. If your temperature is under 97.8 for 3 or more of those days, then you're leaning more towards hypothyroidism, which is an under-functioning thyroid. 97.8. What's under that? If it's over 98.6, that indicates hyperthyroidism. The thyroid's running too fast.
So it's bad.
Yes. You don't want it running too fast. You don't want it running too slow.
So you don't get no Brazil nuts.
A lot of times what I've seen with people who have thyroid conditions, that before their thyroid condition really set in, they were running back and forth. They would go back and forth. They would go hypo and hyper, hypo and hyper. Their body was trying to find that regulation because it wasn't getting the nutrients it needed, or something else was going on with the connection of the hormones. And then they just settled in as a hypothyroid. If you turn the page to page number 82, it gives you symptoms of hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. So you guys can take time on your own and kind of look through those and see if any of those match. I had the question last night. Do you have to have all of them? No, but if you have a majority of them, or you have a good handful of them, then it's possible that you may be dealing with one or other condition. But like I said, the best way to do that is use the basal body temperature method that I just gave you, and you can find out yourself if your body is running at an abnormal temperature in relationship to your thyroid. Yes, Ethan?
When you're overweight, do you have headaches like really bad?
When you're overweight,
If you're
you can. Headaches can come from so many different things. But if somebody is overweight and they're carrying a lot of toxicity, the headaches can be due to toxicity.
what about migraines?
Possible. Also, what happens too is a lot of people get really tense up in their shoulders and in their neck, and that restricts blood flow. And then when you don't have blood flow to your brain and to your head, it can also increase. So stress will be a big part of that as well. So you can have a combination of those things going on. But overweight is not indicative of migraines or headaches specifically, but it can be a part of it. You just have to look at the overall person's constitution and see what's going on. I find stress to be a large part of that. Large part. Okay, page number 83. Let's give a hand for our adrenal glands. So our adrenal glands are these little tiny glands that sit right on top of our kidneys on both sides. And the adrenal glands are responsible for our fight or flight responses. If you're out in the woods and you see a bear and you're just running like crazy, I mean, yeah, just the adrenal glands that are kicking in. You ran faster than you've ever ran before in your whole life, right?
Real quick.
We've all probably heard the story about the man who picked up the car off of a small child. A man who wouldn't typically be able to pick up a car, but was able to in a stressful fight or flight situation. Adrenaline, which is released from our adrenal glands, will make us like forget everything. Pain, our limitations, everything. And that's how we've been created. I had a car accident when I was 17, the second one 17, and I had crawled out the back window, and I had multiple cuts on my right knee. I still have the scars to this day. We were in the middle of nowhere. I ran a mile and a half to a neighbor or farm neighbor's house. Got there and I reached in, I felt something wet on my knee. And I was like, I was just complete blood. And I had no idea I was even cut. No idea. I don't remember how many stitches I even had. I had no idea. Because my adrenaline was so high that my pain receptors were just completely numbed. I didn't feel any pain at all. So our adrenal glands kind of help us get through some situations sometimes when we really need to get through some situations and help us overcome limitations that we potentially have. So not only do our adrenal glands release adrenaline and epinephrine But remember we talked about cortisol last week? Cortisol being released from the adrenal glands when we have a high stress situation, and we get that message from the pineal to the pituitary down to the adrenal glands to release cortisol, to go back up to our brain, to give us that reward feeling of satisfaction. And then what we want to do is we want to reward ourselves somehow with high fats or sugary foods or not eating at all. Cortisol is also another important component that comes from the adrenal glands, a hormone. But cortisol also helps us to maintain blood sugar, support our immune system, maintaining blood pressure, and also helps us regulate our metabolism. There again. Increased cortisol levels are responsible for increased energy, intensified emotions, and lower sensitivity to aches. But the thing is what we do is we have a tendency to overtax our adrenal glands. We're constantly overtaxing them with stress and with situations in our lives and with outside things that we put in our bodies, such as coffee and caffeinated products, Red Bulls, all these energy drinks that are out there. They constantly tax our adrenal glands. Prescription drugs do it as well, especially your ADD and your ADHD medications. Very much known for stressing out the adrenal glands, as well as inhalers. Inhalers will do that as well.
So what do you use instead of an inhaler?
Well, that would depend on the particular situation, but there are herbal combinations that you can use to inhale instead. But like I said, that situation is different for each person, depending on where that's coming from. Because sometimes that can come from a prescription, sometimes it can come from an allergy, sometimes it can come from some hormonal imbalance going on in the body. So we have to investigate those things to really get an idea. But there are herbal reliefs for asthma or for increasing the breathing capacity, increasing the epinephrine, so that way we have a relaxed opposed to a constrictive flow. So that's something you just have to talk to me on more individually, depending on what that person is experiencing. Another thing the adrenals do is the adrenals communicate with your liver to release blood sugar, or glucose rather. Glucose is stored sugars by the liver when your sugars go low. So when your blood sugars are low, your adrenals get a message to send another message to the liver to say, hey, release some of that glucose because the blood sugars are getting too low. But if you have a problem with your messaging system, you have a problem with that highway, or you have some interference going on, right? Then we don't get the messages properly, and then we can have low blood sugars in those situations and have a hard time getting out of it without actually having to induce something. Eating a Snickers bar is what my uncle used to do. They would pull over, Snickers bar! I remember seeing my grandma run into the convenience store. Like, what's going on? I don't understand. His sugars are low. I'm like, I thought he was diabetic. Doesn't that mean his sugars are high? Anyway. But it brought him right back up. Of course, he had to do a bunch of insulin afterwards, too. Anyway. And the thing is in our country, we have more adrenal exhaustion probably in our country than most other countries throughout the whole world. We live in a stressed society. We're constantly putting more stress on ourselves and each other. Adrenal exhaustion is high. If you have energy dips at regular times throughout the day or like in the afternoons, this could be a symptom of adrenal exhaustion or adrenal burnout or adrenal fatigue. Stimulants such as coffee add to the adrenal fatigue and or exhaustion. Basically, we have 3 stages of adrenal weakness, and that is adrenal fatigue, then it goes to adrenal exhaustion, then it goes to adrenal burnout. I worked with a kid in Austin. He was on Ritalin since he was like 8. He came to me when he was like in his 20s, early 20s, and I mean, that particular drug had burned out his adrenals so much that he had asthma and he had other issues going on, because his adrenals were no longer able to help produce the hormones that needed to be produced because of that. And it took him a while to get through it. But it just totally burned out his adrenal glands. But I've seen all sorts of different cases that have happened with that. Page number 84 is going to give you some of the symptoms of elevated cortisol. So you guys can read through those on your own and see if you maybe is somebody who is subject to any of that. And of course, like I said before, calories restriction increases cortisol levels. The body regards famine as a threat. We talked about this earlier. So, but in addition to caffeine, alcohol, and diets that are low in protein and high in carbohydrates, all of these attribute to adrenal burnout. All of them. If somebody can drink a bunch of coffee or a Red Bull or any of these stimulants and not have any effect at all, they don't get jittery or they don't get the energy from it, or they can do, several in a day, their adrenals are most likely completely burnt out. Because there's just no reaction to that stimulant anymore, because there's been so much stimulus, the adrenals are just like, and then they think they need that to keep awake all day, or they think they need that to function throughout their day, because that's the only place they're getting it. The adrenals are no longer helping them with that. So let's talk about some options that we have. Let's talk about thyroid support. So thyroid support is a particular product that Nature's Sunshine has. It's made from raw thyroid gland. And you want to be really careful when you work with these particular products, because you want to make sure you're getting them from somebody who knows how they're processing it, where they're getting it at. New Zealand and Australia are highly known for being very humane to the animals and to the slaughtering process. One thing they do with your glands is they don't throw them on the floor and then come back and pick them up later, like you see in most slaughterhouses in this particular country. So you want to make sure you're getting raw glandular products from a company that knows where to get the products at, and making sure that they're getting something healthy. But thyroid support will enhance the actions of the thyroid hormones. This is a product you don't want to use for longer than 3 months. You want to use 3 months on, 1 month off, 3 months on, 1 month off, but you want to go back and forth. You don't want to continue to do it. Kelp is another really good product for the thyroid specifically. Kelp is a sea vegetable that's very high in natural iodine and wonderful for helping supply that natural iodine needed for the thyroid. Very inexpensive too. I've been on kelp for ages. 7-keto is another one that they've got written down here. Stimulates your thyroid production and supports weight management goals. 7-keto is really good for people who feel like they've hit a plateau and they need a little bump in the right direction, because it helps the production of T3. And then of course for adrenal support, we've got adrenals, or for adrenals we've got adrenal support, which is another glandular product. It will help to strengthen those adrenal glands, and it does take time. When the adrenals are burnt out, it does take time to get them back in check and get them back where they need to be at. So you do need to be patient with that, and you need to be very careful about not continuing to stimulate the adrenals over and over again.
So Sean, I have a question.
Yes.
Seeing this word keto, because a lot of people on the job, they talk about.
A keto diet, yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is wrong with that diet? What is good about it? Is it okay?
Okay, so whenever you go on any kind of a new diet or nutritional program, it should be something that you can kind of manage continually. Not do for 3 months and then you don't do it anymore. You need to be on something that's going to last long term. And the problem with 7-keto is very strict, or 7-keto, right? Keto is very, very strict. Very, very strict. And it's just not applicable for most people. Like on In.Form, like I was saying earlier, how we can actually take, and have a family dinner and eat maybe some of the things we don't normally eat and not really suffer the consequences of it. 7-keto, you can't do, or I keep saying 7-keto. Keto can't do that. On the keto diet, you can't do that. There's not really a maintenance program that goes with that per se that really helps keep you in that fat burning mode, because that's the whole idea of the keto is to increase the protein and burn fat, but you can't do any carbohydrates whatsoever. So I mean, it is a good jump start maybe to get into something, but there again, it doesn't teach us about keeping a proper body constitution with all of our numbers either.
And most people will go back to their old ways.
Yeah, it's not a lifestyle. It's not a lifestyle that you can actually do for the rest of your life and feel good about it.
Because my doctor says, she said I know when someone is on it, she said I can smell it. I'm like, but then when I tell people what I do, it's the same. No, and that's why I was trying to, I'm like, no, it's not keto. I'm
Yeah.
not doing keto. It's not
Yeah.
the same. It's high protein,
Yeah.
but it's totally different.
Yeah. And we are allowed carbs through our one fruit a day. We are allowed carbs through our vegetables. We're allowed carbohydrates that give us a lot of nutrition, but don't give us the sugars. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's where that balance is at. All right, so the last thing I want to make sure that I
Thank you,
give you guys some information on the thyroid support. Here you go.
thank you.
Give you some information on the adrenal support.
Thank you.
Also going to give you some information on a product called Solstick Energy. Solstick Energy, you can both take samples of this tonight if you'd like. Solstick Energy is something you can try. It doesn't have the stimulants in it that you see in most stimulant drinks and things like that. But Solstick Energy will help with energy if you need it, especially before a workout or something along that line.
No, you don't need it. Adrenalplex, is that the same as this adrenal?
It's not going to be the
It's
same
not?
thing, no. It's going to be
Okay.
slightly different.
Oh, okay, no,
No.
thank you.
So the last thing I want to cover real quick is plastics. Plastics are really important in understanding how plastics affect our hormones. Plastics come from usually some type of fossil fuel source deep within the earth. And what plastics can do is they actually can be precursors to a lot of diseases, especially a lot of hormonal diseases. Things such as thyroid dysfunction, allergies, asthma, premature birth, obesity, low sperm counts, insulin resistance. All sorts of things can be related to plastics. We really need to make sure that we are being very aware of what our usage is with plastics specifically. This paper that I'm handing out to you gives you the full information on what kind of plastics to stay away from, kind of giving you an idea of what kind of exposure you can have by plastics. But plastics themselves can cause a lot of problems with the glandular and the hormonal systems specifically. We've actually seen issues with genderization in relation to plastics. It can do all sorts of things, and the thing is, plastics are most available to us when we eat or drink something out of plastic that's been heated. As soon as plastic's been heated, whether it's been sitting in the sun or sitting, in your car, microwave especially, the chemicals from that food or that liquid, excuse me, from the plastic go into that food and that liquid, and then you consume it. We're seeing a lot of umbilical cords with a high amount of plastic contaminants in them, and it's going straight to the children, to the unborn child. And on top of that, and then as soon as they're born, we're using all these plastic things, bottles, plastic diapers, plastic all sorts of things, and continuing to expose them to this chemical from the plastics that can actually alter their hormones and their genderization. When you look at the bottom of a plastic bottle, you'll see a little triangle, and that inside that triangle will be a number. In here I've shown you some of the different numbers you need to stay away from and some of the things you need to be looking for. Some plastics are okay as long as they are a proper plastic without the high density of chemicals, but still do not ever store anything in plastic. Your water bottles should be either glass or stainless steel, if at all possible. When you store your food in the refrigerator, you should always store it in glass. And you most definitely don't ever want to warm anything up in the microwave in plastic, especially. I don't advise microwaves anyways whatsoever, because microwaves create a lot of radiation and it actually alters the chemical structure of the food, and the food just doesn't have the same nutrient value to it. I mean, take your time, get a toaster oven. That's what I tell people. We just live in this society where everything has to be instant, and instant is not healthy. Phthalates is something else we need to be careful of in plastics. BPA is another thing, but as I said, I put this article together. You guys can go through and read it a little bit and understand it more. But it's really important that we reduce our plastic exposure as much as we possibly can, especially when it's heat oriented. I had one person tell me, well, when I buy my water bottles, I just take them home and put them in the garage where it's cool. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't know where those water bottles were at before they were at the grocery store. Because the grocery store, yeah, they're kept cool. But I mean, they've traveled halfway across the country into a hot truck, and you never know what you're getting. I can literally tell when plastic has been heated into a water and I drink the water. I can tell.
So,
I can taste it.
you know what? I thought it was me. You know those jugs, those 5-gallon jugs?
Mm-hmm.
We go to the well,
Yes.
and I said, man, it tastes funny.
Mm-hmm.
So is it from the jug and not the water?
It could be depending on the type of jug that it is and if that jug has been heated. So you need to look at the numbers on the jug and make sure it's BPA free and see if it's been exposed, if there's any potential of it being exposed to heat. But what I would do is I would take a glass jar and then, and then have your water filled in your jug, and then I would taste both of them and I would see if you can tell a difference then. That will also help tell you if your jug is potentially contaminated.
So that way it tastes different
Possibly.
from a bottle and then from a glass cup?
Yes. Most definitely. I get spring water sometimes over at Walgreens, and I like their spring water. It tastes really good, but there's been a couple of times I can tell that spring water was heated because it does not taste the same. It has a different taste to it. It just... Thank you, Regina, for coming. We appreciate it.
26. I'll see you then.
That sounds great.
Excuse me.
Thank you so
I'm gonna
much.
get in the camera's way.
All right, well,
Yeah,
if
good
anybody
night.
doesn't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for being here tonight. Of course, like I said, we will not be doing class next week, but the week after that, we're looking at doing a module on exercise and the importance of exercise and how you can get it in to best benefit you, as well as doing module number 11. So you guys have a healthy week, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.